How many of the patients are using AI?
One of the biggest ones, which is Character AI, has 20 million monthly users. Over half of them are under the age of 24.
What I see today is there's a lot of social justice therapists, advocacy going on. What is the role of the therapist when it comes to all of this progress taking place?
It's important for therapists to be aware of AI, even if they don't like it, because of the way that hundreds of millions of people are using it for emotional support. It doesn't matter whether you are for or against AI. It's irrelevant because it's already in your practice, because your clients are using it for emotional support.
Give us a synopsis of where you are today when it comes to AI in the mental health space.
A lot of the general public thinks therapy is something akin to giving advice. This is not what therapy is. Therapeutic relationship and alliance is what brings about the change.
Dr. Wood, I've thought about ways to start this conversation because I've had a lot of conversation around AI on this podcast. Either the people that are like, yay, AI, and the people are like, no, AI is bad for you. And today, I want to talk to you as someone who is a centrist. I've seen a lot of your work on LinkedIn. One of the reasons why I wanted to have you, and I wanted you to give us kind of like a synopsis of like where you are today when it comes to AI in the mental health space.
Thank you so much. Well, I think that there are so many alarmists and also evangelists that are out there that it's hard to kind of navigate the waters of getting a true understanding of the lay of the land with AI. And so my hope is to speak about it in a way that primarily raises awareness, that creates a container for people to think deeply about it for themselves, as opposed to being told, this or that, or over, reliance on it, or overly fearful. I want people to be able to consider the implications for themselves and then make the right decisions for how they want to use it or not.
Interesting. So like, what kind of implications have you taught for yourself that put you in this position of someone who's a centrist when it comes to AI?
Yeah. Well, let's back up a moment and give a little bit of a lay of the land in terms of what do we see right now with AI. And I'll talk about it from the perspective of a clinician or a therapist and what we're seeing in the therapy realm. So, we have a lot of AI assistant tools right now. We have note takers, summarization, transcription, all these assistive tools that are um, helping save time and create efficiency for therapists. So, to speak to that clinician side of things, you may be for or against that, and it's okay. But I want us to think about the role of what some of our administrative duties are for. For example, when we take notes, it's something that is actually solidifying in our own brains our client's case. It's helping us conceptualize and build meaning and find insight. So there's an important role in terms of why we take notes. So I always recommend, if you're going to use an AI note taking assistant, that you really use it as um, a point of reference to maybe help you see if you missed something, or if there's deeper insight that you're not seeing, because we can get stuck in a rut with some of our clients. And so to me, it's always an adjunct, not a replacement. So instead of, you don't really want to just take what an AI summarization says. You want to be very clear about reviewing it, seeing if there's any errors, seeing if there's any algorithmic bias, those types of things. Okay, so let's move over to the other side of the lay of the land in terms of our clients. What I like to say right now is that it doesn't matter whether you are for or against AI. It's irrelevant because it's already in your practice, because your clients are using it for emotional support. So it's important for therapists to be aware of AI, even if they don't like it, because of the way that hundreds of millions of people are using it for emotional support. So, one thing that I like to do when I'm talking about this is to encourage clinicians right now to add a very simple line to their intake assessment, which is this: what role, if any, does AI play in the emotional support system of your life? So I think that it's going to become standard that we are asking our clients how they are using AI. And really it's kind of surprising to see how many people are using it. And this can really open up a dialogue about why it's being used, how it's being used. And people need a place that is judgment free, a place that doesn't bring shame to AI usage, but can support the process of where people are at with it. Yeah.
Hmm. Wow. I mean, you've beautifully capture what I see every day, especially in the clinician community. You are highlighting, the problem in a very empathetic way, but you were saying this is where the patients are. They're spending time here. Like that's what we need to focus on as clinicians, because I think in the noise of this AI, hype and the good or the bad, they always miss the actual patient. I just said, I was like, oh my god, the patient. Yes, they're using AI a lot, and now I want to know, just based off of the work that you've done so far, how many of the patients are using AI? Is there a stat available, which is saying maybe there's a platform out there that patients are spending a lot of time on instead of talking to a therapist?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we need so much more research in this area because we are at very nascent stages. We're really at the beginning here. And so there's a lot that is still, especially in a longitudinal form, needing to be researched and studied. But I'll throw out a stat, when we look specifically at artificial companions, which there's a number of different AI types, if you will. We have a chat GPT that is created and designed as an assistant, yet people are using that for emotional mental health support. Then, we have mental health specific AI therapists, mental health support, all of that. Then we also have artificial companions. And artificial companions are really formulated to be a friend, a confidant, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, to simulate romantic dynamics, all of that. So, if we're going to look specifically for a second at the artificial companion side, one of the platforms, one of the biggest ones, which is Character AI, has 20 million monthly users. Monthly. I mean, that's a huge 20 million monthly users. And over half of them are under the age of 24.
Oh my lord! It's funny because my voice is on character AI. I have, on the podcast, I had a lot of people recommend that I upload my voice, so I have an entire avatar. It's like this dude with dreadlocks, and he has my voice on character. I don't know what they're using it for, honestly. But wow, that's wild that you say that. Like 20 million monthly users on character alone. Like, oh my god, I'm just not registering that. Okay, sorry, I'm just processing that information because
Yeah, I mean, that's just one platform.
right. Wow. So like when you hear those numbers, what does that tell you? Because as I'm listening to you, you have a very judgment-free tone. You don't judge anyone. You are just the kind of like in the middle. You meet people where they are, and you are hoping to help them understand whether this tool is something that they can use, but also your clients, your patients are using this already. And I kind of have like a twofold question, but like as a clinician, why is that important? Number one. And then when you hear numbers like 20 million monthly users, what comes to your mind first?
Yeah, it's important because this is something that both now and into the future, we won't be able to ignore. We are going to have an increasing amount of clients come into our office that have AI as a part of their emotional ecosystem. And if we are not equipped and prepared to support them with our own understanding and awareness, they're going to find a clinician who is. And so the last thing we can really do, and of course, clinicians would never do this in general, but to, just kind of shut down a certain thing or say, you shouldn't be using that. I think we need to be informed enough to have really relevant conversations with our clients about, why they're using it. I like to use one of the lenses that I use for this is attachment theory. So I like to conceptualize this through seeing how AI is kind of that idealized attachment figure, and how, it's always coming in to mirror you and respond to you and understand you and all of these types of things. And so it can be an idealized attachment figure. And there's a range along the AI attachment spectrum of what that means. So there can be non-problematic attachment, which is someone's using it as a reflective tool and it's really supportive and helpful for them. They can disconnect from it and disengage. It's no big deal. That's fine. But then you kind of move over into escalating attachment and then even addictive attachment. So we need to be aware of the signs of when somebody is moving into addictive attachment that also has AI psychosis over here as a potential. So we have to know about this because it's bigger than we think in terms of the amount of people who are using it.
Right. No, yeah, it's a lot bigger because that's just one platform. You're not talking about chat, like ChatGPT. I remember like Sam Altman came out and he was saying how a lot of people are using it for like emotional stuff, and he was like, I wouldn't even trust this platform because that's not the function of AI. But then now you have like a different platform that came out not long ago. I'm like blanking on the name, but I think it's called Ash therapy. And I'm not sure if you're familiar. So ASH therapy, and like one of the things that I saw, especially like clinicians talking about, it's like the name. A lot of people are having issues with companies calling their AI chatbot therapy. I've seen some really balanced take of individuals calling it emotional support tool, like they're okay with that, and I think that's fair. But then on the other side, there are people that are genuinely pissed that that is a tool. And when I say on the other side, I'm talking about clinicians as a whole. They don't appreciate that startups are calling their AI therapy because they've spent this amount of years in school to become a therapist, have a PhD, individuals like you. So I wanted to get your take as someone who's a centrist, because I get the left and the right take all the time. And I wanted to hear your take when it comes to that naming. Should it be an AI therapist or should it just stay as a mental health support tool?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I really understand all sides of this. Like all sides of it makes sense to me in terms of therapists maybe feeling threatened, feeling like, well, what if this could replace me? What if this could take, my job? And so I get that. On the other level, it makes sense to me that therapists are thinking, I'm licensed, I've paid for school, I've had to go through an abundant amount of supervised hours. We've done all of this work to be able to call ourselves a protected term in terms of being licensed therapists. And so that all makes sense to me. And also, kind of in addition to that, is this idea of when we anthropomorphize AI, which is kind of giving it a name, um, that can go along this AI spectrum that I'm talking about in terms of how far we go in anthropomorphizing this. And it can be a slippery slope down there. Really, to use these tools as reflective tools, as interactive journals, as that mental health support, that's the best place for these tools to be, is over here as a supportive adjunct. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, thanks for that. That like distinction in the first place, and now it's making me thinking. What is the role of the therapist when it comes to all of this progress taking place? Because what I see today is there's a lot of social justice therapists, advocacy going on, and I think that's also causing a lot of confusion. Because now you're having the therapist that is fighting for their profession, the title, the all the work that they have to do to be where they are today, and usually you don't hear the patient conversation taking place that much, because again they have fears that are real. This technology is fascinating. It's a black box. As a technologist myself, I work in software and I don't understand it, and it kind of blows my mind till today. So it's like when I hear those fears and I see there's a lot of social advocacy, social justice taking place within therapists. And I'm like, what is the role of the therapist? Should they focus on working with the patients, or should they take up this role of making sure that their profession is protected? Because you don't see this happening in healthcare very often. Language, to your point, in healthcare is very is it does not replace. It doesn't sound like it's going to replace the doctor. Maybe some doctors, but it's not just generalized. Where here in mental health, they say AI therapist. Now you're saying every therapist that fits that description could be the person that they're talking to. So I'm trying to understand what is the role of the therapist today in this AI future that we're heading into.
It's such a great question. I love this question because this is part of what I like to do is really create a container for therapists to think deeply about what their role is, about how they want to proactively respond to, this moment in history, this fascinating, poignant moment in history. So, a few things. I think that therapists need to be equipped in understanding how people are using AI as emotional support so that they can have those conversations when they come into their office with clients. I think this whole other side of advocacy is really important, and there's a lot of layers here. Okay, so there there's when I even think about kind of the first easy touch point layer of advocacy, it's that if we are using some sort of EHR that has, AI like note summarization in there, which you may or may not want to do that, and that's fine. But if you're doing it and you're reviewing your notes and you find errors, you find algorithmic bias, advocate by sending that back and showing the company like, hey, this is what I'm seeing, and this, we need to be training these models in a way that are inclusive and that are, culturally competent. And so that's kind of one of the layers of always advocating for um, the models to have a solid cultural framework and competence to them. Another layer is kind of adjunct to that. I'm not sure if you've heard of the MIT researcher Joy Buolamwini.
Oh no,
So
no, no.
she is okay. There is a Netflix documentary called Coded Bias that would be great if people want to go check that out. But Joy is a MIT researcher who has worked to advocate for facial recognition kind of equality. So she's worked in AI facial recognition and noticed that it is biased against people with dark skin, and it doesn't pick up people who have darker skin. So a bit of the story is this: she went in to study facial recognition. She herself is a dark skinned female. She realized that the facial recognition, the AI recognition, wouldn't pick her up, like didn't recognize her face. So she found a white mask and she put it on her face and it picked it up. So she went into this really awesome journey of researching how AI facial recognition mostly picks up white males, and then the accuracy picks up white females, and then it goes down and the accuracy is lower in picking up the faces of non-white males and non-white females. So this is fascinating research that she's done. And what she did is she took this to a bunch of the large tech companies, and one of them, I forget which one, said, "Thank you so much for bringing this to us." And they corrected and fixed their technology so that now it's a much more equal spread of facial recognition. So, I mean, these are areas in which we can be advocating for the technology itself to be built more, ethically. And so I think that it's important that mental health professionals are working in conjunction with technologists right now so that the platforms that are being built, because there are platforms out there where they're trying to get it right, where they're trying to have it be truly just a supportive, um, you know, a supportive tool. And so we need to cross pollinate with technologists and with, excuse me, with technologists and with mental health professionals so that we can really have the best design possible.
I like that you are just designing how therapists in general are like uniquely positioned to like lead this AI revolution when it comes to emotional support and being there for like clients and then understanding that they have the capability to help. And sometimes I wonder where that pushback comes from because again I maybe my mind is wired my mind is wired different. I'm more open to technology when it comes to just the work that I do, the spaces that I'm in, but then in the mental health space, you know, I did some research around just like identity, how we identify with things that we do, and how sometimes when that identity is being attacked, we can easily just be like very ready to fight anyone, you know, at that moment. And I wanted to know your take when it comes to this whole AI, you know, like progress. Like, why is it that as a clinician, and I know they're human, I have to make that, that context here that they're humans at the end of the day. But I want to understand as a clinician, why is it that their identity feels like it's being attacked whenever AI is being spoken about? Is it due to the creators of these platforms? Usually the excitement around what they do is usually like, we're here to revolutionize, or we're here to change, we're here to replace. These are the languages that they tend to use. And I'm trying to understand where did the misconnect or the disconnect happen to a point that it seems like they want to work with the therapist, but they always, it sounds like they want to take over that industry as a whole. Maybe some people are, but maybe some people are not aware of this. And then now the therapist is getting attacked or feel like they're getting attacked when it comes to their identity as a therapist. And I want to understand you being a centrist, how do you see that play out? Those two different communication, barriers that are always just causing friction between the creators and then also the people that are the expert in that space.
Yeah, great question here. And I think that this is a multifaceted kind of interwoven answer in terms of the contributing factors. So one of the contributing factors here is kind of a broad misunderstanding of what therapy is. You know, a lot of the general public thinks that therapy is something akin to giving advice. Like you just give advice. You go pay someone, they give you advice. This is not what therapy is at all. So there's kind of this baseline misunderstanding that therapy is, and we could go on and on here, but it's this deep, therapeutic relationship and alliance is what brings about the change. I mean, research has shown that when researchers are looking at all the different modalities of therapeutic engagement, like CBT, DBT, narrative therapy, existential, any kind of approach you can think of, when they're trying to find like which one is the best one, the answer is the most transformative experience is not the therapeutic modality, it's the therapeutic alliance and relationship that gets built. That's what the changing factor is. So that, you know, can't be replicated in the sense of what happens between a therapist and a client within sessions, is really important, particularly in the sense that therapists have a call and a duty to bring a challenge to clients. Like AI tends to be very agreeable and even sycophantic. And so the therapist doesn't just sit there and agree with their client. This is not our job. Um, we are, meant to be bringing, helpful challenge and pushback and understanding things so that real growth can happen. So that's a bit of a dichotomy in how AI is designed right now versus the actual therapeutic benefit of being with, a real person. I think that technologists are starting to realize that when you build AI that's overly warm, overly empathetic, overly at all sycophantic, it reduces the reliability. We've seen research on this, and it's just not the approach you want to do. So I think there's some corrective measures coming in there. I'm with you in the fact that I am more open to technology in the sense that I desire to be a part of designing these platforms in a way that is ethical, that is safe, that has all these frameworks of being, crisis intervention protocols and cultural competence and, escalation frameworks, we data privacy, informed consent, disclosures. I could go on and on. There's so many things that we need to do that we as clinicians are good at that can marry and tie in with technologists. So let me give a couple other factors here, going back to your main question. We need widespread AI literacy. I mean, widespread, not just with therapists, absolutely in the mental health realm, but in society in general. We need to be understanding the limitations of AI, and we need to be understanding kind of this AI attachment spectrum that I talk about frequently. So it's really a confluence of factors in terms of how we can make this thing go well. It's both how the technology is built, it's AI literacy, it's mental health professional advocacy. All of those things kind of bridge into one.
That's such a beautifully rounded just answer. So thank you for that, and thank you for going back to my original question because I was going to ask you again. But thank you for covering that. We're coming to the end of this conversation, and I want to ask you this: like, how does policy looks like today when it comes to AI? I know your work kind of centers around just the education aspect and also policy, specifically AI policy. I know it's a new industry; it's changing every day. But I want to know, what does policy look like today? You've kind of referenced a few of the policy. I kind of want to get into that to just kind of establish trust for like therapists that haven't had time or made time to even look deeper because just due to the factors of what we've talked about here.
Okay, so AI policy. Let's talk about this at a number of different levels. So, kind of one of the levels that I professionally work in is essentially helping mental health practices set up their own internal guidelines and guardrails, their own AI policy around AI usage. The reason this is important is because if you are using AI in any capacity at all, you want to bring informed consent to your clients and a lot of transparency that gives them the power and the option to opt out if they want to, or find other, ways to get things done. So I help kind of guide clinicians in terms of how do we do the disclosures, the informed consent, all of those things. So that's one level of policy. But then let's go up and talk about like kind of bigger policy. I imagine many of the listeners are aware of, you know, bills that have passed, such as the Illinois bill that is banning quote unquote AI therapists. We've also got some legislation coming out of New York that is implementing in November 5th of 2025 that is specifically focused on artificial companions and some regulation around that. We have some legislation in Utah and Nevada. So we've got a patchwork that's coming out, which obviously it would be nice to have something that's more coherent. But it is important for us, another, place for therapists to be engaged is to be keeping abreast of how this legislation is affecting, all these different platforms and what it means for us. So it's definitely an important piece of this puzzle.
Right. No, yeah, it's a very big piece because I think we're all used to the sci-fi explanation of artificial intelligence. So I think a lot of people are stuck in those those movies, and a lot of platforms don't do a really good job of educating because again they're all trying to scale, they're trying to raise as much money as they can, and just
Yeah.
scale. So I think that can turn a lot of therapists away. They're like, I don't want to become one of your products that you use to scale and then just leave me and then go raise a bunch of money and just to make it as efficient as possible. So I think that's also another factor as to why a lot of trust, is being like impacted at such an early stage of AI. Um, I know we're getting to the end of this conversation, but there's something that I like to ask every guest that's especially mental health, like providers that are working in AI for or against or centrist. I like to know: do you offer a CEU for AI? Because that's something that I've asked everyone that I've spoken to so far. No, everyone says no. So I want to know: do you offer that? Because I think that will be so beneficial.
Yes, I am in the works of this. I'm at the tail end of getting it completed, getting the approval, all of these different things. And so this is something that I feel is important. And so you could ask me that question again in even a couple of weeks.
Right.
And yes,
I know. Well, yeah,
I'm at
good to
the
know that you are working on it and you're in the tail end. I'm actually very much interested because that's also like one of the things that I'm always asking people. Do you have CEU for therapists? Because I know this will be very much important because as a technologist, I know how fascinating it can be when you can give an expert something that can support their work and take away all the stress of the admin aspect of it, and just let them do what they do best. It just excels the person at a completely different rate. So, however, I know communication, the language, the education is lacking, but the speed of AI is so fast, and I know it's like leaving so many people behind. And I'm hoping, I love that you believe that therapists are positioned to lead in the age of AI, and I believe the same too. So again, I don't know if you have anything that you want to add to the conversation before we, like end the conversation here.
I would just agree with that wholeheartedly. We are absolutely positioned to lead in this. And so I understand that this conversation can bring up a lot of different feelings, a lot of mixed feelings. And I just want to encourage listeners to hold space for that, to reflect on what's coming up for you. And also, if there's fear involved in this, to hear the voice of the hope in terms of how we can lead in this time, in this era. And so, yeah, I'm just grateful for the opportunity to chat about this with you. And thank you so much for having me on.
Of course. Thank you so much. I genuinely enjoy the conversation, and I need to go check in my voice and character and see how many people are using my voice to listen, to like have a chat with.
You do.
I know. I know. All right. Thank you so much.